Hey pre-calc students, welcome to today's lesson on 2.7 notes part 1 on polynomial long division. So let's make sure we remember how to do plain long division. When you are dividing two numbers, it's important to know your vocab. So take, for example, 439 divided by 5. 439 is called the dividend. And then the 5 is called the divisor. So you'll hear me use those words as we work through the long divisions with polynomial functions. So if you ever forget, hey, what's a divisor? Make sure you keep track of these notes, okay? All right, so when you were dividing with long division, something like 439 divided by 5, you would put the dividend inside of the long division symbol, and then the divisor would go on the outside. So you would actually have to break down the dividend into pieces, okay? So look at the 4, the 3, and the 9, right? Those are like the place values. You would ask yourself, how many times does 5 go into 4, which is the first number? Well, 5 doesn't go into 4. So you could put a 0, but it doesn't go into it. Next, you would, since it doesn't go into 4, you would combine the 4 with the 3 to make 43 and ask yourself, how many times does 5 go into 43? You want to make sure you get as close as you can to 43 without going over. So think of your multiples of 5, okay? 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40 is the closest. So that's 5 times 8. 5 times 8 is 40, so we would put that product under the 43 and subtract. So this is key. Hopefully you remember that you had to subtract. 43 minus 40 is 3. And then the next step is bring down the next value, okay, which is 9. Okay, then you'd ask yourself, how many times does 5 go into 39? So 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30. 35 is the closest. That's 5 times 7. And put the 35 under 39 and subtract. Now, you can technically keep going by putting a decimal and then filling the rest of the place values with zeros, but we're going to stop here. Remember that the 4 was called a remainder. And the official way to write a remainder is to put it over the divisor. So for example, the answer to this question of 439 divided by 5 is that it's 87 and 4/5. So the remainder is written on top as a numerator over the denominator, which is the divisor. Okay. So AKA 87 and 4/5. But for polynomials, we're going to be using this notation where if you have a remainder, you're going to add it and put it over the divisor. Okay, so let's take a look. Remember, you're watching a video, so you can pause, rewind, fast forward, whatever you need to do while you're watching this video to understand the lesson. Okay, so notice that the directions say divide the two functions using long division. Okay, so we are dividing f of x by d of x. So f of x by d of x. So that means that the f of x is our dividend. So think back to our first example, and d of x is our divisor. So when you set this up, you're going to put the x minus 1 on the outside, and x cubed minus 4x squared, etc., etc., etc. I'm going to just put a little 1x here. You don't need it. I'm going to also fill in a 1 here. I'm going to fill in all the coefficients. I just find it helpful when I'm doing these problems. Okay, so you're going to kind of look at the different terms, the way we broke down 439 when we were dividing. You see I color-coded those. So we're going to focus right now on just the x cubed, the leading term of the dividend. And I'm also going to focus on just the leading term of the divisor. So you're going to ask yourself, how many times does x go into x cubed? But it's a little different than with numbers because you got to ask yourself, what do I need to multiply it with to get x cubed? So if you already have x and you want x cubed, you need to multiply x with x squared. Okay? Now what you're going to do, and this is where you have to be careful, okay? So notice I just focused on the 1x at first, but 1x is attached to a minus 1. So you're going to distribute the x squared to both pieces. X squared times x to the first part, to 1x, is x cubed, and x squared times negative 1 is negative 1x squared, okay? Now, think back to the previous problem that we did with just basic long division. After you figure out what number, right, multiplied with 5, so 8 times 5 was 40, we subtracted it. So we are now going to subtract both of these terms. Now, when you subtract x cubed, right, so we're going to subtract both of these, you need to make sure that you're understanding that you're subtracting both of them. So both terms, right, are subtracted. So look at, this is how you're going to read it out loud. X cubed minus x cubed. That should be 0. They cancel. Now negative 4 minus negative 1, okay? So I'm going to write it off to the side. You're doing negative 4 x squared minus negative 1x squared, which becomes negative 4 plus 1. That's going to be negative 3 x squared. So remember, it's not negative 4x squared minus 1x squared. It's negative 4x squared minus negative 1x squared. Honestly, that's the trickiest and toughest part of long division because you have to make sure you keep track of that subtraction, okay? Okay, so now your next step is to bring down the next term. We're going to repeat the process. So now we're looking at this leading coefficient and ask yourself, what do I need to multiply x with to get negative 3x squared? Okay. What do I need to multiply x with to get negative 3x squared? Well, I'm definitely going to need one more x, and I need a negative 3 to multiply, right? So think about it. Negative 3 times 1x is negative 3x squared. And negative 3x times negative 1 is positive 3x. Then you're going to subtract both of those terms. Think about it. Negative 3x squared minus negative 3x squared becomes 0. I forgot to fill in this guy over here. Okay, and then you have 1x minus 3x, which is going to be negative 2x. So just like these first ones canceled, right? These 3x squareds cancel, and then you have 1 minus 3, which is negative 2x, and you repeat the steps. And now you're going to focus on this leading term and repeat the steps. What do I need to multiply 1x with to get negative 2x? So I'm going to multiply by negative 2, and I don't need any more x's because I already have an x in the divisor and I have an x in the dividend. So now you're going to distribute that to both pieces, and we're going to subtract them, okay? Right, so negative 2x, right? Negative 2 times x is negative 2x, and negative 2 times negative 1 is positive 2. And then we're going to subtract. So think about it. Negative 2x minus negative 2x becomes 0 because that turns into the opposite. And then you have 6 minus 2, which is 4. So those cancel, and you get 4 as a remainder. So our answer is going to be everything that you have left on the top. So all of this. So f of x over d of x equals x squared minus 3x minus 2 plus the remainder over the divisor. That's the answer, okay? Oopsies. Okay, so again, this is a video so you can pause and rewind at any time to see the example again. All right, let's take a look at the next example. So we've got f of x divided by d of x. So your divisor is x squared plus 2x minus 3, and your dividend is 3x cubed plus 5x squared minus 11x plus 4. All right, focus on the first leading term and on the first term of the divisor, and ask yourself, what do I need to multiply x squared with to get 3x cubed? So I'm definitely going to need another x, and I'm going to need a 3, right? So check it out. 3x times x squared is 3x cubed. But don't forget you have to multiply it to all the pieces, so finish distributing. After that, remember we're going to subtract all the terms. So 3x cubed minus 3x cubed is 0. Right? 3x cubed minus 3x cubed, nada. 5x squared minus 6x squared. I just realized I forgot my squared over here. Pew! Okay. Is going to be negative 1x squared. Remember, because it's not 5 plus 6, it's 5 minus 6. So negative 1x squared. And then negative 11 minus negative 11x minus negative 9x, which becomes plus 9x, and so that's negative 2x. Then you bring down the next term. Repeat the process. Now focus on this. What do I need to multiply x squared with to get negative 1x squared? Well, I already have the x squared, so all I need is a negative 1. So I'm going to multiply negative 1 with all of these pieces. So negative 1 times x squared is negative 1x squared. Negative 1 times 2x is negative 2x. And negative 1 times negative 3 is positive 3. Make sure you're being super, super careful with your work and your signs. Now I'm going to subtract everything. So negative 1x squared minus negative 1x squared becomes 0. Then you've got negative 2x minus negative 2x. That also becomes 0. And finally, you have 4 minus 3, which is 1. So your remainder is 1. And the way you write your answer is you put your quotient, so the answer that's on the top. So that's 3x f of x over d of x equals 3x minus 1 plus the remainder over the divisor. Okay, if you want, feel free to watch this video again. I promise that the more you practice this, the easier it'll get. But obviously you can tell with all the little details like the signs and so on, you have to be super, super careful with your work and stay organized. Okay. All right. As always, if you need help, let me know and I'll see you soon.